Adventures. They are a wonderful and very necessary nonprofit organization that works to bring access to people of all abilities to recreate in the outdoors. I'll give the microphone to Anita, but I just wanted to point out after the show, or between the workshop and the show, Anita will have a table set up over here if you want more information. And right outside the doors in the hallway, there is a 50-50 raffle table set up, and Mary Ruth is selling tickets, so be sure to buy your raffle tickets, and it's 50-50, so some will have one lucky winner, and the rest of the money will benefit our AA. So, here's Anita.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here. So here's the thing, I didn't get invited to walk the runway in a little while, so I'm going to do my own little quick outdoor fashion show. So I have a magic vest. I want to know though, how many of you can press a button and automatically start warming up? Do you have a heat leg jacket? See, the really cool thing is when I go camping, it's really cold. But they have, I'm sure some of these wonderful people over here sell the battery packs, they're solar packs, and I can connect it to the pack in my jacket. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on winter outdoor wear, in case you don't know about it yet. But I have to take it off. So I am excited to have this chance to talk with you tonight about just a lot of different things. So I met Charles when I was working along the Erie Canal pathway with an adaptive cycling program, and I would bring multiple kinds of adaptive cycles there and match people to them so they could ride along. And Charles arrived one day, got out of his car, and walked rather slowly with his cane over to where I was. And I matched him to a cycle, and it looked like that. It has one hand and steering controls, but I'm on and on, and you're able to do your braking, your steering, and your gear shifting all right here. And that really worked for Charles. So I matched him to that bike, put him with a Canal Pal volunteer, and sent him off down the canalway. I continued to match other people to a variety of different types of cycles that evening. It was a muggy night, sunny summer night along the canal. And after a while, I see Charles coming back down the path. And in just a minute, I hear him. He was loud, he was angry, he was cursing. And he was still pedaling all the way down to me. And his volunteers were behind him like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. So he gets closer and closer and said, Charles, what's wrong? He said, nothing's wrong. My doctor is what's wrong. My doctor, you know what he said to me when he met me in the hospital room that day? He said, well, you'll never walk again. He never told me I'd feel the wind in my hair again. And at that moment, I looked up and his wife was coming over. She'd been in the car reading a book while he was off riding a bike. She had heard him coming back. She was crying. And her tears were about that day in the hospital that she was hearing him talk about. And her tears were about what she had just seen as her husband rode a bike again. He never told me I'd feel the wind in my hair again. What do you think is worth living? I personally don't think it's work that we do for a living, right? It's, well, I'm a recreation therapist. I really work so other people can play. And for me, when I think about all of the benefits of recreation, and I don't know, do you think about your recreation life? Is that space, is that time when we are doing some incredible things like, well, benefits of recreation, increasing our stamina and our muscles, and learning and adapting, being able to create social networks during that time and in those spaces, increasing our physical our ability to do everyday life skills, decreasing isolation, decreasing loneliness, decreasing depression. That's what happens during recreation and leisure time. And that's pretty powerful. And actually, it's like pretty much the best medicine out there, right? For people living with a disability, having access to the outdoors, to recreation, is not an unalienable right. Even though 30 years ago, people put some standards and put it into law with the Americans with Disabilities Act, we still are not seeing a community, a society where people with disabilities are just able to go to. 1 in 4 Americans is living with a disability. That's 26%. Here in the greater Rochester region, we have about 300,000 people living with a disability. Maybe you're a person with a disability. Maybe you know somebody with a disability or have taken care of and helped someone with a disability. Maybe you will become part of this one and only demographic that we all have the opportunity to join at some point in our life. And when you do, when you think about Charles, and you think about his wife, what they were angry about was because they wanted, on that day when the doctor walked in, that's the only thing they left with. When they continued to talk to me about it, it's the only thing that they heard him say that day. And so they had this sense of fate that what they were going to live now was not going to be the joy of how they had been living. And so when his wife turned to me and she said, "Can we come on Saturday and bring our daughter and come riding together?" Because that's what we were doing right up until he had his stroke 6 months ago. I had to say no. Because I was just there on Monday nights, 10 Monday nights of the year. The bikes were in a shed the rest of the year. What they wanted to do was to know that they could continue to live, right? To live with the disability, to live with that diagnosis, to live together, to learn how to do the things and reap the benefits of the things that they have been doing, even though...
Anita, sorry to interrupt you. Can you hold that microphone closer to your mouth?
Yes, I can.
It needs to be loud to you so that everybody can hear it with the hearing loop.
That's great. Is this better?
Excellent,
Great.
excellent. Thank you so much.
You bet. People, where was I? So, living with our disability, right? Living together, figuring out how you can continue to do what you were doing before in this new way that you would be doing it after. So an interesting statistic, don't know if you know, but 80% of our health and wellness takes place outside of the medical office. Even if you spend a lot of time in the doctor's office, 80% of your health is going to take place outside of that space. So what is that space? That's where we need to start talking about when you are living with a disability. There's a couple constructs, ways to think about it. One of them is if you take this photo and you say, hey, well, if the person didn't have a disability, there would be no issue with access. There would be no problem. The person with the disability is the problem. We need to fix that. Well, that's much more of a medical model. And what I prefer is looking at more of a social model. A model that says, hey, if someone hadn't put steps here, and maybe they put a ramp, everyone would be able to access that space, that thing, that activity. when we create that kind of approach to what we're looking at, we begin to see the solutions. I find that I am a solution seeker, kind of oriented towards that, which is good because I'm dealing with a lot of problems that need some really fantastic solutions. And this kind of approach, I believe, is where we can really focus what we're doing. So as I said, that day on the canal with Charles and his wife, who, by the way, if you heard the intro, he walked up to where I was using a cane, going pretty slowly, but boy, was his doctor really wrong, right? He was walking, and not only that, he was able to feel the wind in his hair. But what bugged me was that day I said no to them. And so we needed a new model, a new way, a new approach. And that's where Rochester Accessible Adventures started, is because I looked around where everybody else gets to play and said, well, who's already in those spaces that can learn to make those spaces welcoming to people with disabilities? Because I can't be in more than one place, right? So I actually went back to where I had done that cycling program, and there happened, you want to just have all the equipment here, and people could come to your business and rent out whatever they want. So because people want to just live. They don't want to come here to see me. They want to be like Charles and his wife and their daughter and just go out together. Fortunately, he said yes. And so at Erie Canal Boat Company, we built this new model where a business can operate 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. with full inclusion, with full expectation that everyone could come there and be matched to a piece of equipment that would allow them to go out on the canal pathway or out on the waterway together. Not with his wife sitting in the car reading a book while he went and rode, but together. And that narrative began what we've been doing over the past 8 years, where we've just opened the doors. And I can tell you a quick thing. I used to know everybody that touched those bikes because I was the gatekeeper. And that summer that we opened with Peter with full inclusion, he called me, it must have been July or August, and he said, oh yeah, and he started listing people that had come and rented the cycles. And I said, what? They were there without me? The nerve. But the beauty. I was no longer the gatekeeper. Now I can focus on encouraging people to get out, bring family members, and go together. I also want to make a quick shout out to Fairport. The Village of Fairport has really embraced this kind of a model in all of their economic development. We continue to work with them, and so now you can go and play. And then you also have a place to go using their accessible restrooms that they just opened. A good feature there is that they have fold-down tables, changing tables that hold up to 400 pounds. Very important because it allows people to not have to get the personal care needs on the floor of a restroom. It allows them to stay in your village, stay in your community, and participate without having to leave before they're finished playing. So lots of kudos, maybe to think about bathrooms, but it's a really cool thing. So I worked with, we had about 26 people that came one day to Braddock's Bay for an inclusive birding event. And this woman in the chair there, she came flying over to me afterwards and said, Anita, it's your fault. Now we have 2 things that my family can do together. And I laughed and sighed. I was excited because just 2 weeks earlier we had done an adaptive fishing workshop to show people some adaptive features that they can use that might assist them with that. And fishing is her dad's favorite thing, and birding is what she really wanted to do, and now they knew that they could do that together. And you may think birding? Why can't you just look out your window and be a birder? No, you can't. But the reality is, birding has become an activity. Activities around which there's social connection and engagement and being able to go out and explore on trails together, share apps together, learn about what birds you just heard yesterday, right? It's a whole community around this activity. And people with disabilities have not been explicitly invited into that space. And so we're really thrilled that Genesee Valley Audubon Society, one of our inclusion partners, decided that they want to figure out how is it that what we do could become more inclusive, more accessible, more meaningful to the whole family, the whole friend group, and not leaving people back at home that don't think that they can come participate. And so they have spent the past year assessing all of their trails that they use on their excursions to find out what is the terrain like. How can I give someone a description of that so they can decide if that trail is going to work for them? How can we look at all of our processes, from registration to the actual event day, to find out what that's going to be? As a matter of fact, they're holding an inclusive birding and eclipse viewing. Partial solar eclipse on Saturday will happen while we're at Minden Ponds for this inclusive, this is explicit outreach on their part to begin truly inviting people with disabilities to become birders, to become part of that community. The summer before Dee and I, whoever Dee is, we assessed around 25 different properties of the New York State DEC in Region 8, which includes Monroe County and a few other counties. We went everywhere, and we looked at all of their sites that had accessibility features, quote unquote, to figure out how functional they really were. So, could people really get from the parking lot to the dock? Could they really use the observation deck because there was a big gully between the parking and the observation deck? Could they use the birding sites and the fishing sites? Did they understand what they had so that they could invite people to actually come use those? Because why invest if you're not going to invite people to use it, right? And so this past summer, they spent time doing more of that kind of intentional outreach. They're really land managers, not programmers. But boy, yeah, if you're going to spend money on something, invite people to come experience it. So that's been really fun to see that they even have car audio tours. If you can't or don't want to get out of your car, you can still tour the properties. So there's a young guy named Mather. His father loves mountain biking. And Peter heard about the work, this activity that was happening in the village of Rockport. The previous summer, we had helped the village of Rockport put an adaptive kayak launch in as a precursor to them becoming more accessible on the canal. And so the On the Canal statewide program was promoting accessible, inclusive cycling and kayaking there in Rockport. So Peter's dad saw that flyer and he said, oh, they have a hand cycle. That'll be great for my son. So they traveled up from Binghamton and they rode in Rockport. And while they're riding in Rockport, one of our Canal Pal volunteers was riding and Peter said, well, really I'm a mountain biker and I want to share that with my son, but I can't. So I'm just really happy I'm riding with him with something. He was using that hand cycle. And Keith said, do you know about adaptive mountain biking? No. So Keith then told him that our inclusion partner, Victor Parks and Recreation, had taken on adaptive mountain biking because they have 70 miles of trails, and why not make those inclusive of people with disabilities? And so they began restructuring their trails to fit a wheel-based cycle, and they got their own e-assist mountain bike, and they began promoting it. So Peter and his son came back from Binghamton, and Mather started riding a mountain bike. But most importantly, they were able to share the passion together for the very first time. So, we're really excited about this list because it's growing. It started with Erie Canal Boat Company, one place that said yes to inclusion. And it has grown, as you see, to many different types of arenas. Why is that? Because think about where you move around the community. We have a fabulous community, museums, destination travel places, your parks, your camps, libraries, schools, all of these spaces that are enrichment places, right? All of this space that we can use. Genesee Land Trust and the YMCA of Greater Rochester are two of our most recent inclusion partners, and they're truly in the beginning stages. And you're thinking the beginning stages of what? Well, inclusion is a process. Even though I spend many a night thinking, how can I make the magic wand so this could just happen, and we would be inclusive, it is a process, it is a journey, and you need to learn. And so REA takes people through a process of learning, understanding what the target is, what does it look like, what is inclusion, what is exclusion, how do we get there, what are we already doing? And so we assess, we teach them to self-assess their organization, from physical to organizational to programmatic parts of everything that they do, so that they do understand what they have. That's great, training's always great, but now you need a strategic plan. And the strategic plan is based on the audit findings, and then my favorite is the implementation. So if you're gonna do some training, implement it, right? So we will spend, we spend it 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever's next, right? We spend time with these agencies going through all of that. And that's how the stories that I told you happened. They happened over time, and because they're there, you can actually have this conversation where you can say, oh, did you know about adaptive mountain biking? Right? Or fishing, or whatever. So, we've been really busy these past 3 months. And we can always use people to help us on this mission. Just to show you, we've reached 1,141 people through 43 events in 7 New York State counties across 14 zip codes, just in the last 3 months. We had 271 volunteer hours. Looking at you. Because your support in this, and I really do have an invitation for you tonight to consider as an ADK group. We can always use that to become even better at what we're doing. I'm thinking of COVID. And one of the things that happened when COVID hit is that we realized all the places we really enjoyed going and that we could not go to anymore, right? Doors shut. That's a reality for people with disabilities on a daily basis in some cases, where they think they would want to go probably isn't expecting them, it's not looking for them to be there. And so when we think about what our response is going to be to that knowledge that we learned, I think for us it's turning it back around into something that we can do. Another thing that happened with the pandemic, where did everybody go during the pandemic? You either stayed stayed home or you went outside. Those are your two options, right? And so parks people will tell you everybody went to the parks. But even the playgrounds were taped off and shut down. So that left open spaces and trails. But those weren't so accessible to people with disabilities. Why? Not because nature just didn't form things with nice straight paved surfaces for us, but because there wasn't information about what the trails are actually like out there. There wasn't a systematic approach and data that people could look at and say, I wonder if I could take my mother-in-law on that trail now that she's using a scooter. I wonder if I could push myself in my chair, like how far am I going to get before it turns swampy, or there's a boardwalk that has 3 steps up on it, or I just don't know. So guess what? I'm not gonna risk going out there. Some trails will say there's a steep incline. Well, what's steep? I don't know how your knees are. Some things are steeper than others. What does that word mean? Right? So we need, and RAA is beginning to work on, a system that will help our region be able to give meaningful information for people to be able to read and look at before they go out. A safety factor for sure, but also just sheer enjoyment. So my invitation to ADK is to be a part of that. Become a trail ambassador and assessor with us, and let's get that information out to more people. All of that in our dream of what the world could be like, what our society, what our communities could be like. Like, pick a number. You saw our list, about 16, 18. What if there were at least 50 places per county that people knew that they could go to, that were welcoming and inclusive? That's what we're looking for. Across the southern tier, across Finger Lakes, western New York, greater Rochester region. At least 50. I don't want to put a cap on it though. I want everywhere to be inclusive. You know, when you have a dinner party and you invite a few people over, and you know what you do when you're preparing for them? And you think, okay, so he's a meat eater, he's a vegetarian, that one doesn't like strawberries, so no strawberry dessert. They're gonna bring their kids. Let's put the puzzles out for the kids. Oh yeah, she really likes that wine, so I'm gonna have a bottle of that wine. You end up doing these one things for that one person because you know they're coming. Because you're expecting them there. And you know what? You probably know what that feels like when your dinner party host was expecting you. And that feeling, that's inclusion. That's what we're talking about. Is having these places where people are expecting others to be joining them. You're expecting everyone in the party to be coming. And you've done the preparation. And it just is. It's what you do. And that's our vision, is that a society that we live in, a society where recreation, sports, and tourism are fully accessible to and inclusive of people with and without disabilities, always. Because we can do that. Because that's how our families are. And I don't know if maybe tonight you were able to hear that as, maybe you needed to hear that this is the new narrative. This is what's happening in our community. This is what's happening in Greater Rochester. Maybe you needed to hear that for a loved one, and you want to be able to tell them, hey, there's something new happening. They're expecting us in these spaces. And maybe you tuck it away for someday when something shifts in your life, and you'll want to know that you're expected to keep moving and to keep living, just like Charles. Charles, by the way, it's been at least 10 years since his stroke. He's kept living. He loved to dance before he had his stroke. He's learned to dance again. Looks a little different, still makes him just as happy. He's gone sailing, he's gone kayaking. He's writing now. He's writing kind of his thoughts, especially around his stroke and the process afterwards and the world afterwards. And he's also come back and done writing with his family. And he's continued to feel that wind in his hair. And sometimes even just knowing that you have the choice to say yes or no to something is the biggest gift of all. And that's what we want in our community. I have three invitations for you tonight. One is to visit our wonderful website. Just going to call out Katie on that, because she's the one that designed it for us. I don't know if you should hear that, but we'll tell her later, right? And also join us. If you're a social media user, just tag our sites on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, and follow us there. And see and keep track of. You don't have to talk to us, interact with us, but just keep track of what is happening. Because the next invitation will be for you to join in, for us to partner on this. Really big invitation is Friday night. We have a Lights On for Inclusion. Our happy hour fundraiser will be at Fairport Brewing on University Avenue. It's drop-in, it's all just networking and social and fun. Very much like I felt. You already have that tonight, but you're welcome to join us there for that. And number 3 is to think about this, and definitely let's talk more. The momentum in the outdoor world for accessible and welcoming inclusion is huge right now. There are so many people that can benefit from it, that are doing it anyway, that have figured out ways to do it, and that's where we're moving in the Western New York area. So as you take that piece and you think of any of the pieces tonight that might stick with you as a story, if you have questions, certainly find us. We'll be around tonight, but also just to come. But my thing for you is to think about the benefits that you all experience in the outdoors. And then partner with us, and let's see how we can make sure that more people have that access and more people are living with disability. Thank you very much for our time tonight with you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Anita. We're going to take a break now. There are refreshments out in the hallway. Our show will start at 7:30, so feel free to mill about and visit our outfitters, participating retailers in the back, and also Anita's table. If you haven't already, there's a 50-50 raffle out in the hallway that benefits Rochester Accessible Adventures. And also, this is breaking news from REI. They have donated some products to our chapter, which we are going to tack on to the 50-50 raffle. So whoever gets drawn and wins half of the prize money will also receive a REI Flash Day Pack 22, a Nalgene 32-ounce bottle, a REI Trail Made trekking poles. So it's a pretty big prize. So again, if you haven't already, visit Mary Ruth out at the table in the hallway. And also, when you're milling about, please, like I said, visit the tables. We also have, MedVed is offering a $20 gift card to a lucky winner. Land's End has 2 tote bags, swag bags with water bottle and keychain. You just have to give your email address. Orbis is offering a $50 gift card. You also have to give your email address. So, mill about, and we'll see you at 7:30.